Welcome to Heritage Stories, Visionaries and Experimenters, created by the Freedom's Way National Heritage Area. Each story introduces an inspiring individual whose actions, discoveries, and inventions shape social, intellectual, and cultural innovation in Freedom's Way and America, changing the way in which Americans viewed the world. They made a difference. I'm your narrator, Jennifer Benson. Today's story is suffragist Hazel MacKaye, Pageantry and Passion. On March 3, 1913, the eve of President Woodrow Wilson's inauguration, the first Women's National Suffrage Parade was held in Washington, D.C. As part of the event, the pageant Allegory, written by playwright Hazel MacKaye of Shirley, Massachusetts, was performed on the majestic marble steps of the United States Treasury Building. Praised by the New York Times as one of the most impressively beautiful spectacles ever staged in this country, Allegory was a resounding success, illustrating those ideals toward which both men and women have been struggling through the ages and toward which, in cooperation and equality, they will continue to strive. In the performance, Columbia, representing the United States, summons justice, charity, liberty, peace, and hope to review the women's suffrage procession of over 8,000 marchers. Just 1 year earlier, in the winter of 1912, MacKaye attended the first meeting of what would become the National Women's Party, organized by women's suffrage activist Alice Paul. Paul, impatient with the slow pace of gaining women's suffrage through state legislation, called for passage of the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, instituting a woman's right to vote. To advance this cause, she advocated the radical actions of civil disobedience and the boycotting of political parties opposed to women's suffrage. Hazel was drawn to the cause and dedicated the next 12 years of her career in pageantry to promote the National Women's Party's fight for the 19th Amendment and to ensure the passage of the Equal Rights Amendment. Born in New York on August 24, 1880, into a famous theatrical family, Hazel was exposed to the dramatic arts from an early age. Her father, Steele MacKaye, was a prominent actor, playwright, and producer, and her older brother Percy, a distinguished dramatist and poet. As children, Hazel and her younger brother Benton, the creator of the Appalachian Trail, acted in their brother's early plays in Shirley's Center Town Hall during summer vacations at their Aunt Sadie's cottage. This bucolic New England community became their permanent home, and the Grove House on Parker Road, Hazel's residence. Following in her family's footsteps, Hazel attended Radcliffe College's theater and pageantry courses, becoming an honorary member of the class of 1910. She acted with the Castle Square Theater Company of Boston and the Coburn Players, often in productions of her brother Percy's plays. At the time Hazel joined the suffrage movement, she was both an author and producer of pageants. From the start, Hazel believed a pageant has more power to convince people of the truth of our cause than any other means. A pageant is a forceful and vivid form of drama, an intensely moving thing to witness. The Allegory pageant was one of her most celebrated productions. Described by her sister-in-law Jessie Hardy Stubbs, a prominent lecturer who toured the country promoting the women's vote in state legislatures, as a force in the world today, and what's better, a force in the world tomorrow. Hazel continued writing pageants for the cause of women's rights. The following year, she produced the inspirational pageant Susan B. Anthony at Convention Hall in Washington, D.C., to raise much-needed funds for the cause. Hazel also wrote pageants with inspirational themes for the YWCA and other organizations. On August 18, 1920, victory for the suffrage movement was achieved when Tennessee's vote completed the ratification of the 19th Amendment, giving women the right to vote. In Shirley's Center, when the news was received, Hazel quickly gathered her family and friends at the Shirley Meeting House to ring its old bell in celebration. Held in her hands was a portrait of Susan B. Anthony, one of the founders of the women's rights cause. An observer could not help but recall that from the Colonial Meeting House marched the Shirley militia to the first battles for independence in the American Revolution. The Women's Party could now focus on passage of the Equal Rights Amendment. 1923 marked the 75th anniversary of the Seneca Falls, New York Convention of 1848 and was a momentous year for Hazel. Pageants showcasing the events of 1848 were needed. In a June 16, 1923 letter to Hazel, Alice Paul wrote, "I am writing to ask whether you and Mrs. MacKaye would be able to come to Seneca Falls to help in making the ceremony a beautiful one. We all feel that we can never undertake anything of this kind without you." Hazel enthusiastically accepted, writing, "To be in the game again, and no young generation shall replace us. They have their trails to blaze, and we have ours. We may join hands and blaze some of them together, but it's a long way off before we'll give up the blazing and sit down by the roadside." On November 18, 1923, Hazel directed the Seneca Falls Convention's 75th anniversary celebration at the White House. Thousands attended. Hazel's mother accompanied her daughter and was celebrated as the radical grandmother. The closing of that year marked the end of Hazel's active participation in the National Women's Party. Hazel died in 1944 and is buried in Shirley Center Cemetery beside her family. Her heartfelt words found in a letter to her mother in 1922 express her devotion for the cause of women's rights. "Remember, I am doing really big things, significant things, using my faculties to their utmost in a great cause. This is life for me." We hope you enjoyed this episode of Heritage Stories. Each story provides insight to the lives of individuals who were born or lived within the Freedom's Way National Heritage Area and were shaped in some way or another by their time here. These are individuals who made a difference and were at the forefront of social, intellectual, and cultural innovations that relate to new things or ideas that the world, or at least Americans, had never seen before, proving enormously influential on American culture, making Freedom's Way a region of firsts in American invention, thought, and design. To learn more, please visit freedomsway.org.